Hello, all you RevOps professionals. Welcome to becoming a HubSpot super admin. I'm Matt Bolian with Stupid on behalf of the Sprocketeers community. And we have with us someone to tell his story of how he became a HubSpot super admin from the great, we'll call it country of Wales. And his name is Tony Dowling with Real Inbound. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Matt. And I hope you can't hear my retriever who's just decided to join in the background.
We invite all super admins. I'm sure he is really good at HubSpot, or she is really good at HubSpot as well. So welcome. Okay, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm really looking forward to the conversation.
Love it. Well, we start most of these, Tony, a quick icebreaker. Let's get to know who. In America, we like to make people's names short. We like who TD is.
Oh, yeah. No, I like that. TD, that works.
I'll call you TD the rest of the show. Who TD is. What are three things that only your mother or your retriever may know about Tony Dowling?
Well, my mother would remember because it was quite a while back now, but I applied for a job as a spaceman with NASA when I was 10. Which clearly my mother encouraged me to do. But it was an amazing thing. They wrote back. They actually wrote back in all seriousness. They took a 10-year-old from Wales seriously. They wrote back to me, and they told me what I would need to do when I was a bit older, because they weren't taking on 10-year-old spacemen at that point. When I was a little bit older, what I needed to do, and actually, it really made such an impact on me. It shaped my early education because I went into physics, did a degree in physics and intended postgraduate work in physics because that's what astronauts did. They did maths, they did physics, engineering, that's the sort of thing they did. And I remembered what I needed to do to become a payload specialist or a mission specialist. And it was absolutely mind-blowing. So my mum will remember that. I've lost the paperwork. Can you believe it? I had a NASA stamped envelope, the whole thing, and I lost it. That was quite some time ago.
What an incredible story. That is not to judge the best secrets, but that may be one of the best ones.
Cool.
What are two more?
Well, I think one my retriever would know because we walk together quite a lot. Actually, is not necessarily to look at me, but I listen to quite extreme music. I'm a bit of a heavy metal fan, a bit of a metalhead, as we call it. The louder, the better. Still a bit stuck in the 80s, 90s. The big five, Slayer, Metallica, Anthrax, those sorts of bands. But as I've matured, as I've got a bit more sophisticated, I've started to appreciate Led Zeppelin and Black Sabbath, the forerunners of the metal movement. So you'll find me listening to that stuff, and that leads nicely into the third and my finest moment, Matt, which goes over most people's heads. So I forgive you if you have no idea what I'm talking about. But at the peak of my corporate career, which perhaps we'll touch on a little in a minute, but the peak of my corporate career I was actually the managing director for Metal Hammer magazine, which was the metal music magazine in the UK. You may even have had a version in the US. And I know we were tied up with something called the Golden Gods Awards out of Los Angeles. So it was actually quite a strong crossover when I was there working with the Classic Rock Show in LA and New York, Classic Rock magazine and Metal Hammer magazine. So yeah, my corporate white-shirted tie and collar background hides the deep dark secret. I'm into extreme music.
What? Okay, so we're about to move into your story, which I feel like I've gotten some of, which is fun. So there's 10-year-old TD sends a letter to NASA. NASA answers. It shapes him so profoundly. It affects like what he studies to become a payload specialist or a mission specialist, to go to physics, study physics. Period. Also loves metal and loves it so much. There is something that happens. He's like, NASA is no longer my dream, and I'm now going to pursue um, music. And then we're talking about HubSpot. So there's some things that have happened that I'd love to get into. And we get into what I like to this next question to get into the story is what were you doing before HubSpot? But for you, because this seems really cool. Like so, you it seems like you had a period of time when you were doing concerts, writing, doing pieces, running a magazine, and then transition. Just tell me how you got there, and then how you transitioned out to find HubSpot and start your own company. I'm just
Yeah.
sure there's a couple.
Yeah, no, it's all as is the best stories. They're all sort of entwined. And what actually happened? It was very difficult to find a job as a scientist outside of applying to be an astronaut. Unlike a lot of salespeople, I accidentally fell into sales, and I accidentally fell into media. The local version, like the Mississippi local newspaper, I fell into our local town newspaper, and 30 years later, I'd had a career in media. I went from selling media to running media. It was always on the sales and marketing side of the businesses, always commercial. Even as a managing director, I was the commercial MD, and started using HubSpot as a customer for my own teams. I remember the time before CRMs. I remember what the CRM was like when it first started, and I gradually made a bit of a name for myself in what we now call digital transformation. We didn't call it that then, but that was specifically helping traditional media businesses become digitally enabled, becoming digital businesses. So when the Metal Hammer experience came to an end, I was living and working in London, having an absolute blast, whale of a time. Ended up back home. It was a big thing about money, as it always was. Money was no longer available in the way it had been, so I landed back home, and I got my second accidental career when I accidentally became a consultant. Now, I don't think I suit consultancy because, in my view, those who can do, you'll have heard this, and those who can't do, teach. But if you can't teach, you consult. So there's a joke. Everybody is a joke. So I didn't enjoy being a consultant, and I didn't enjoy too much being on my own. But at this time, I'd done several major digital transformation jobs. I'd done several major media businesses, taken to become web first businesses, particularly a publishing business. That led to the Metal Hammer gig, which again was a question of taking traditional music magazines, putting them online, creating a subscription model, building product, building games. We actually were making computer games, Team Rock computer games at one point, which was incredible. And I wanted to do that. That was where I had a real passion in helping people who seem to be scared of technology, and helping them cross that bridge, and I originally called myself a digital navigator. I thought it was a bit of ahead of my time, but
so you were what they call the digital Sherpa of the metalheads.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's really interesting actually, because that's what we did. These metalhead, these journalists, these passion-driven, purpose-driven, value-driven journalists, who were pure fans. They're all massive fans. Needed to come to the light. Needed to learn new ways of working and new ways of reaching customers and all those kinds of things. So, I did the consultancy thing for a while, and then decided not cut out for working on my own. I love working with teams, and the bigger the team, the better. And decided to pal up with a long-time mate of mine who was also a HubSpot fan, and we decided we were going to be a marketing agency because that's what he was good at, and a HubSpot partner because we sort of both shared that kind of thing. And that's the transition. That's how we went from the big corporate world to a small start your own business kind of thing.
So question, specifically as like, when's your first introduction? So you're this is what I love about HubSpot. There's all these different paths to us ending up in the same places, which is becoming a professional using HubSpot either as an end user, as a agency as a consultant, and you can go back and forth to these. When's the first time? I mean, because so HubSpot's been around what, since 2011. I actually introduced the CRM in around 2014 is when they started doing. When did you like? What led you to say, okay, this is what I'm going to build my digital transformation and as an end user? And what led you to choose HubSpot at that point? What made you fall in love?
Is a very clear path. I started getting interested in digital media, as we called it then. It's just media now. And new media, as we called it then, it's just media now. And they were new, to actually transfer the working practices of a newspaper to a website is a big deal, right? There's an awful lot of things that have to change. And one of the ways that I did it, I realized was the best way to do it was to teach our journalists to become digital publishers. So if they become digital publishers themselves, then they pick up a lot of the. So I got into a lot of things like clout early on, very much into social media as it was when it was nice and a positive place to be and supportive. And I came across a guy called Mark Schaefer, who runs a blog called Businesses Grow. And I followed Mark. I found him on Twitter, followed him on Twitter, struck up a relationship. He'd been to Wales, one of the very few Americans who'd ever been to Wales. And we just started talking. Next thing I knew, we were putting on a social media marketing event in Cardiff with Mark Schaefer as the main speaker, entirely driven by Twitter, which at the time was mind blowing. So even though I was a media executive even then, not a mention of it in traditional mainstream media. It was entirely driven by Twitter, by the conversations we had, by a group of people who came together. And that's when I first thought, wow, this is life changing. This is business changing. And we got 200 businesses into the room and taught them about social media marketing as it was then, which was very different to what it is now. But along the way, I bumped into a chap called Marcus Sheridan, because Marcus Sheridan used to write occasionally for Mark Schaefer, used to guest post on his blog. And Marcus Sheridan blew my mind. This was at the time, this was when he was a pool guy. This was before he was a sales lion, and certainly now before he's an impact guy.
Spot end user. That was his story, right?
And it was Marcus loving the story, loving what he had to say. It was Marcus who led me to the tool. It was just, I need to check this thing out. And since then, I've either used it for myself as a salesperson, I've used it to start up businesses as a consultant, and clearly now I use it every day for my own business, for our own agency, but as a HubSpot partner. Yeah, so I've been involved in it for a long time, I think.
So Mark, just in my mind, Mark Sheridan, one of the original, he's one of the original, I would call influencers, end user turned company. What time was that? What year was that?
It would have been around 2010, 11, 12, that sort of time. I think we did the event in 2012.
Gosh, it's been a decade you have been in the HubSpot. So in my mind, you're also an OG. You've been you've been in HubSpot for the last decade plus. And
very much on the sales side as well, because of the background and because of my my business partner Mark is much more the marketing. Although I talk about marketing, I write about marketing, and we consult. Excuse me, we consult with our clients on marketing, but it's the sales side that ignites me when it comes to CRM, particularly sales enablement, especially.
So we were, if you were one of the original 10 years ago, 2 years ago, quite frankly, Tony, even right now, people don't, most of the market, at least in the US, does not see HubSpot as a CRM yet. I mean, there's still an uphill battle. People are starting to see it for the reality that it is. But for sure, when you were starting, that was not true. What made you say, okay, I love this so much. I see the marketing. I like this, but I'm going to build sales in this before it was cool, before it was even a thing to do. Why? Let me ask this differently. So here, why not Salesforce? Which already would be the preeminent player at that point.
Yeah, I think possibly because we were media, and because that meant we were enthusiastic amateurs. Let's be kind. And Salesforce even then was, in my mind, was extremely difficult to get your head around. Whereas HubSpot just felt felt intuitive. I always liken HubSpot versus Salesforce to be kind of Apple versus Microsoft. Most people understand, Apple have locked things down to an extent so that they don't break, and so that you can use them and you can go from one end of the process. You can find the end of the process on your own. So that's why I got into it, because I picked it up very, very quickly. But more importantly, I think it was far easier to teach the people I was working with how to use it as well. Whereas Salesforce, where we were, and I think, it's funny you should say, I don't think the UK has exactly the same relationship with HubSpot. I think as HubSpot has grown in the UK, I've noticed it growing as a CRM as much as anything. A few hardcore users knew it as a marketing hub, as a marketing app. But we are lucky because of the work HubSpot are doing now, and because of the promotions that they're doing now. People are seeing it as a CRM almost from the start of their relationship with HubSpot, which is really interesting. So we don't have that battle to overcome.
Yeah, with Salesforce having, the U.S. company Salesforce, they were ubiquitous with the CRM and the United States for the last 2 decades. And then Oracle before that, right? They were still, so there's this, I call it rich history. It's interesting in EMEA, and I hear this often. It's like, we're having our CRM revolution right now. Like, people are saying, like, and HubSpot is the preeminent, the force creating that. And I hear that over and over again. So it's interesting to hear it, like, from you being there the last 10 years.
And totally, because, Dynamics, we would come up against, and Salesforce and HubSpot. Those were the conversations. Occasionally, an ERP type, for really serious businesses. But yeah, down to the ease of use. For me, it does, what you want it to do. It does it very quickly. You can knock a sales pipeline up with somebody from first principles in 5 minutes flat. They know exactly what you're talking about. And this is why I'm so excited by HubSpot now, because you can see it transitioning, if you like, growing into... Well, this is why, Matt, this is why we have gone all in on HubSpot in the last year and moved away from the marketing and moved away from the sales consultancy. If anything, now you might call us a RevOps. Don't really have RevOps in the UK. It's very, very burgeoning in the UK. If anything, we're more that, but we're an outright onboarding, implementation, and HubSpot consulting partner. It's been since we made that decision that we've tiered to platinum, and we're currently at Diamond for sales. We just need to catch up a little bit. We won't be far away from Diamond.
Yeah, and sales is more difficult to hit than managed. So congratulations on that. Like, that's going to be, by the time this comes out, you're probably a Diamond partner. It's a big deal. It's a big deal, everybody. When we go is, you've been in here for 10 years plus in HubSpot. What would an up and coming, right? Someone just getting out of, as we'd say in the EMEA or the UK, Wales, the uni, how would you recommend, hey, I'm new to a CRM. I don't know what even the word means, but I hear HubSpot all the time. How do I learn this piece of software and make it where I'm a professional, I'm really good at this? What those like 3 to 5 tips you would give somebody? So
the first one would be to jump in. You can't really break it. I've not yet managed to break it, and I'm certainly fingers and thumbs. I think the HubSpot Academy is just extraordinary as a free resource. If you do some certifications, just do the lessons while messing around for yourself, you're going to learn. Your curve is going to be so steep, just because you take it seriously. And I think and the third one would be, if you don't mind me saying, to follow people like you on LinkedIn. So I changed my my LinkedIn experience when we took HubSpot seriously, because I was talking to a lot of local businesses. I was talking to a lot of smaller businesses, and I needed to learn more about HubSpot, the infrastructure, the the environment, what's going on in the US, which invariably leads us in the UK. So I searched HubSpot, HubSpot admin, HubSpot, and come up with people like your very good self and various others. Obviously, been following Carl Jepsen, Max Cohen, those influencers. So that would be the third, is to get in with like people like you who I've found so generous, so giving. The data box guy, Peter, was actually ex HubSpot himself. I mean, what a fantastic follow. You can jump into a conversation with this guy and he'll answer you as if he knows you. You know, what a cool character. And there's many of those in the HubSpot universe, I think. So jump in and mess with it. Get on HubSpot Academy, because that's the piece, when we talk to businesses, that's the piece everybody ignores. They don't put the legwork in themselves. And I think that's related to why HubSpot and all CRMs fail, which maybe we'll talk about, because I'm quite passionate about that. But get in there, get on the HubSpot Academy, and get into the community. Start talking to people like Kyle Jepson, Max Cohen, Peter, yourself. You know, you're all doing great things when it comes to this little world.
I'm humbled that you would add me in there. I would say, so I'm just recap these three things, which I love. HubSpot Academy, and I would focus to add something here on certifications, because they'll lead you down the right path, and you can even search how to. There's a sales admin path, and you can you click and you can do those, and they're very helpful. Number two, jump in, and that there are two ways to jump in. It is you can become an end user, and you need to work at a company that has HubSpot. And so you can say, I want to make sure you just need to make, what's your tech stack? What's your CRM? Ask that question before you start. Or you go to a HubSpot solutions partner, and that specialize in HubSpot, and just learn it. Number three, there are a lot of people in the community that are giving daily. There's some others, like, I think people are, there's just a robust amount of people that are making videos and tips and tricks. There's Hugs events that you can join, which is a HubSpot user groups that are on that you can join. So I think those are great. And Tony, since you asked, I do want to say is what is the biggest challenge to implementing a CRM? And I'll say it differently. Like, what are the three things you would do to make sure it's done well? What are the pitfalls to avoid? And we can end with this as the crowning event of today's session.
No, this is great. And as a transformational MD, I've thought a lot about this subject, and I think that the first thing I'm gonna talk about is communication. That old chestnut, right? Everybody talks about it, but I mean, we literally got into a onboarding with the sales team. A portion of which was in Germany and in Europe, who had not even been consulted over the choice of CRM when we started to talk to them and train them. So very fast backpedaling to a process mapping exercise, so that those guys didn't feel quite so put out. But just something simple like that. Now, I'd go so far as to become so sophisticated as to create what I call a change brand in your business, right? So don't just drop it in there like a tool switch on, as it were. It's a big deal. And if you're going to use something like HubSpot properly, you're going to need to know why you're going to use it, right? So Simon Sinek says, start with why and communicate, talk to everybody. Second one, again, an oldie but a goodie, is get it driven from the top down. Transformation is top down driven. Transactional change, which arguably is more sustainable, easier to achieve, is bottom up driven, right? HubSpot generally, if you go in from a non-digital to a digital solution, or if you go in from a Salesforce to a HubSpot, which loads of people are now, that's more transformational. That is a big deal. It requires people to get out of the rut, to climb the side of the rut that they've been working on for the last couple of years, and see out above to the bright blue sky. That takes movement. That requires dynamism. It requires momentum, and that can only be provided by the top. So if your chief exec is delegating that task off to the C-suite, not so bad. If the C-suite delegates that down to director management, you're starting to struggle. And if that becomes a sales manager's task, then it's just not going to work. It's just not going to work. And I think the final one, I feel like I just learned this. I'm getting on a bit, Matt. Is saying I'm 53. I've got 30 years in the media. I've been hanging around the HubSpot universe for quite a while, but I feel like I've just learned this. Come up with a plan first. let me qualify. There's loads of plans, right? There are loads of onboarding plans. I've done project plans and use different software to capture the plan and get people involved in the plan and in the planning and so on and so on. But by the plan, what I mean is, it's a bit like the phrase I want to use is all the gear, no idea. Do you have that in the US? Do you know what I mean? If I said all the gear, no idea, right? So as a wannabe golfer, I'd go out and I'd buy Titleist clubs and a nice bag and proper waterproofs, nice shoes, $200 on a pair of shoes, all the gear, no idea. Can't play golf sim life, right? I find exactly the same thing with HubSpot. A lot of companies come to us because they have a problem that they believe the tool will solve, which is potentially a sensible conclusion to come to, but they don't actually know what it is they need to do or know what they need to do with the tool in order to solve the problem. So by start with a plan, I mean, forget your technical plan, forget your system architecture. What are we doing? What is the objective of the game? Why are we here? How does HubSpot, in other words, how does HubSpot support what we're trying to achieve? Because when businesses try to make HubSpot the end game, get the CRM filled out, or Salesforce. I mean, Salesforce is the only app so complicated it has to have an app to fill the app in. But when that becomes the end game, what is that doing to the direction of company, right? What is that doing to your ultimately your ability to achieve what the company? And by the time you get to a mid-sized organization, it forgets what the strategic direction is. Because the sales manager has only got what the sales director's asked them to do. The sales director is only worried about what the chief commercial officer is telling them, is only worried what the CEO is telling them, is only worried about what the chairman is telling them. And that's got necessarily nothing to do with what the business needs to do. So start with the plan. What are we trying to achieve here? All right, we're going to try and sell some stuff. Okay, so how does HubSpot help us with that? Well, it can help us monitor our KPIs. Oh, why do we need to monitor KPIs? Are we monitoring KPIs? What's the KPI? Do you know what I mean? Those are the sorts of questions you have to get in deep with the client first before you even get to the onboarding, in order to make sure that the onboarding is going to be a success. Not every time. Some people pick it up like a duck to water. Some people, they're already set up. They have their systems, their processes, they know what they're doing. They just need digitization. But for those businesses I love working with, into digital, right? The ones who are kind of pieces of paper and point solutions all over the place, who are transitioning to a platform approach, those are the ones I think need to revisit that plan.
I heard you like doing RevOps.
Yeah.
That's what I heard when you said this. So as a recap, if I summarize,
That's it. That's it. Sorry, please summarize.
If I summarize this, number one is just like general is adoption of the platform is the goal. And some tactics with that is there has to be a very clear communication of the why. And your point number three is like you need to understand the why enough that everybody's marching to the same beat and they understand, I know I need to input my data because I know that it's going to affect this KPI. I know this KPI achieves this objective. I know this objective is important for this reason of the company, and everybody can clearly do that. And you got to say things like 12 times and like 8 different vehicles for that to be done. You can never repeat it too much.
Yep.
Top down. I love this. And I feel this is the best is there has to be a report that if it's not right, instead of saying like that a top-down person's looking at, it has to be driven. It's like, hey, if this report is not correct, then you're not doing your job well. And that is a great way of delegating. I have found, and it does start like actual adoption is done long-term top down. Because there are a lot of Salesforce places that have top down and there's a lot of adoption, even though the end users hate it. Mm-hmm. So just like, I agree with your statement. There's the transactional portion. That's why people are leaving Salesforce. But like there is this reality that if you do it top down, it can be achieved. And the last is really, I would say it's the combination of the first. Have your why behind the specific actions, or the comms won't make sense. And then top down will look like a tyrant.
Yeah, it's really important. It's a good distinction, actually. Because, I don't care. I'm on the production line. I'm a salesperson fronting up clients, or I'm customer service dealing with crap every day. I don't even understand what the company is about, why it was founded, what we're trying to achieve, you know. So I don't know why. So every day as a managing director, every day we had a new starter, I would take their first 30 minutes of their day. And if I didn't, it was a massive personal failure. I hated it. I'd take their first 30 minutes of their first day to come out to the MD's office and sit with me for 30 minutes so I could explain to them why their job was so important. And not because their job was necessarily important, because it may not have been. You know, for me, the only people with an important job is salespeople. Well, that's just me.
It's like, yeah.
But whoever they were, whether they were a journalist, whether they were reception, whether they were customer support, whether they were traffic people, whatever they were, right? Because once you've got a plan, once you know what it is you're trying to achieve, and you've broken that down to these are the individual strategies, these are the individual tactics. This is basically, and I call it, how do you focus on your business for a year? By taking it one day at a time, right? You break all that down to the daily activity. Then if everybody in the business does the things they're supposed to do, the business succeeds. Or put another way, if even one person in that business doesn't, then the business can fall over. That means your job, whatever your job is the most important job in the business. Because if you're not doing your job, the whole thing will come crashing down. And that, you know, that's the case less so in major businesses, I think. But even then, there's an NUE that can creep into the business. But for a medium-sized business, a small business, that is crucial, is absolutely vital. So people don't know why they're doing it and why it's important. That's a really good clarification, I think.
I like it. Well, this has been TD, Tony Dowling from Wales, across the lake for us. But honestly, we've had mostly EMEA people on the podcast to begin with. Cool. So thank you. If people want to continue this conversation, because just to be frank, everyone, Tony also is putting out good stuff on LinkedIn. How are people able to get in touch with you or continue the conversation post this podcast?
LinkedIn is easy. I'm one of those weird people who puts my phone number and my email address in my LinkedIn profile, which always makes me laugh then when people ask for my email address on direct messages, but that's another story entirely. So if you look me up on LinkedIn and you find me, you will get directly in touch with me, or you could just send me an email at tony@realinbound.co.uk. Or you could just go to our website, which is realinbound.co.uk, all one word, and get to me there. Hit me up with on my meeting link, and we'll be away. I love talking. As you can tell, I love talking about HubSpot. I love talking about RevOps. I just love talking about everything, really. I'd love to hear from you.
New media, it's actually real media. It's whatever it is now, just media.
Media, exactly.
Tony, I appreciate this time. So for everyone listening, stay awesome, keep doing it big, and stay supered. Adios, everybody.